Jazzcast Pros.
Is there any percentage of your day where you feel like you're operating in your zone of genius? I pause because I think that can be a confronting question. When I was at my last job, I was spending too much of my day in my zone of competency and parts of my day in my zone of excellence. As with so many things that we talk about on this podcast, the awareness is the first piece of the puzzle. It has to start internally. Only you know when you're in that zone of genius because it isn't about the external validation. It's about saying, that felt so good. With this podcast, I feel that vibration when I get off of interviews. I feel so aligned. I feel so elated and this energetic high. Like I'm so excited. Like that was so cool. I just felt this energy. And I'm not sitting here saying I am the world's greatest podcaster or interviewer by any stretch. But it feels so deeply connected to the things I love doing. And it's me pushing myself outside of my comfort zone and in that growth and in that zone of genius. Again, whatever it is that you create, art, music, community, dog treats, conversations, food, finding your zone of genius is going to be the through line of that fulfilling life that you may be craving. Hello and welcome back to the High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the cautiously ambitious woman, remove mental barriers and take action now so that you can achieve your someday desires. This is your host, Rashawn Hargrave, the owner of High Vibe Co-work, and I'm really excited to dive into this topic today. We're going to talk about the one question that has propelled my business to where it is today and one that I ask myself very frequently to keep my business going. So what is that question? Well, my journey has many layers to it, and what I'm doing right now feels like such a cool culmination of the lessons that I've learned through each part of my journey. When I think about the layer that is entrepreneurship specifically, there's one thing that I can connect with each part as I've grown, and that is this question. How can I create more of this? Now, what is this? This is the feeling after doing something in your zone of genius. I consider myself a jack of all trades for the most part. I can do a lot of things decently, with some level of competency. I also have a bit of a knack for, I can figure this out, how hard can it be? Which in one instance led to such poorly hung curtains that they would literally slide to one side because they were so unlevel. But that is a story for another day. So we all have a zone of competency, a zone of excellence, and a zone of genius. The zone of competency is things that we can do relatively well. Most people can do these things to a similar degree. No one's really seeking you out to do these things, but you're pretty good at them and nothing falls apart, Then comes your zone of excellence. You are really good at these things and people seek you out to complete these tasks. From an outside validation perspective, this feels really good. You get compliments and it always is nice to have others say, hey, you did a really good job. Hey, can you do this for me? Because you're so great at it. Yet it doesn't quite feel aligned and you don't necessarily enjoy doing these things. They are really fueled by external validation, and that's not where we want to operate at a high percentage of our day. This is where the magic comes in. It's your zone of genius. That's the space where you are most creative, you feel most alive, and you are super aligned with what you're doing. There are things that you excel at, and you feel so good when you're doing them that you lose all understanding of time and space. In Jen Sincero's book, she talks about it in you're doing something so deeply that your leg falls asleep and you don't even realize it. So that's the zone that we want to get in. In doing some research ahead of this episode, I had heard of this concept, but I didn't realize that it came from the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I haven't read the book yet, so I can't speak entirely to the book. I have kind of heard about this topic in, just conversations, but I'm definitely going to add it to my list because I think it's such a fascinating and crucial in our growth. So I didn't realize that when I was navigating down this path that when I would ask, how do I create more of this? That's exactly what I was doing. I was seeking out more of my zone of genius. The first time I remember it is I used to run a business book club, and we would meet once a month and we would talk about a different book every month. And I would leave those meetings and I would call my dad and I would just be like, I am on cloud nine. I'm so excited. That was so cool. I just felt this energy. So I want to put a bit of a caveat in there, because if something lights you up and you're new to it, you're not going to be extraordinary at it yet. But don't let that deter you. Do not be afraid of being the beginner when you get that feeling. As I mentioned, this journey for me has been complex and layered. There have been so many times when I have felt like a failure, but I kept getting called back to that energy that I was seeking out. I did feel like a failure when I pivoted from education, yet it was just one more stepping stone that got me to where I am today. I have so many lessons that I learned being in education. There are so many lessons that I learned working for a startup. There are so many lessons that I learned from networking, and they really have culminated to where I am today. And it just was this constant seeking of that vibration. So I challenge you to bring some awareness to the tasks that you do on a daily basis and how often you're operating in that zone of genius. I'm not saying that you're going to operate in the zone of genius all the time. Obviously, you still have to take out the garbage. You still have to make your bed. And I'm not saying that those tasks, you still have to answer emails or, do some monotonous stuff. So when you're looking at the percentages, I would never even joke and say, oh, you should be operating there 90% of the time. But if you really take stock in where you're operating on a daily basis, is there any percentage of your day where you feel like you're operating in your zone of genius?
If you've been thinking about starting a podcast and you want to include interviews with people across town, Riverside.fm offers unbelievable high-quality recordings regardless of your or your guest internet quality. And it also gives you separate audio and video tracks for each person speaking. And unlike Zoom, you don't have to install anything on your computer, and your guests don't either. Head over to riverside.fm and use promo code JazzyCast to get 60 free minutes of recording and 15% off a membership plan.
Yes. When I was at my last job, there were so many boxes that it checked. The owners were incredible. The people that I worked with and the community that was there, they were so, so lovely. And I truly believed in the service we were providing. It was life-changing for the people. Yet I was spending too much of my day in my zone of competency and parts of my day in my zone of excellence. What I have found in finding my zone of genius and spending more time in it and continually asking myself, how do I create more of this? I was craving spending more time in it. And the job that I was doing previously, I was continually being pulled away from it. What that did is it created an animosity towards the job because it felt like I was continually leveling down. I have been so active on my pursuit of looking for ways to level up and continue to be in that space of zone of genius that there was just this friction when I would get pulled out of it. I could totally see a time in my life where that would have been the perfect fit for me, but I was no longer there. And I'm so grateful for those lessons, for that understanding, that awareness I now have because of being in that position. As with so many things that we talk about on this podcast, the awareness is the first piece of the puzzle. It has to start internally. Only you know when you're in that zone of genius, because it isn't about the external validation. It isn't about someone saying to you, wow, you did really good at that. It's about saying, that felt so good. Even through the stumbles, even through the struggles, that was awesome. That's where the name High Vibe came from. I was on this journey of going to different networking groups and participating and exploring because, I went to school to be a teacher, which is a very direct path. And I didn't even know what else was out there post leaving teaching, and as well as working in the startup that I was, it was a very specific niche. And so I'm like, what else is even out there? So I started to go and just explore. I was participating in all these different groups. And when I would leave them, I would call my dad and he would ask, how high vibe was it? That was the question that was the measuring stick that I would use. The energy of how I felt leaving after it. That's whether I would know if I wanted to go back or not. Many of these groups probably checked boxes of, what I was looking for, but did they leave me feeling energetically shifted up? Once you bring the awareness to this feeling, you'll start to notice when you're in this space versus out of this space. And once you recognize this feeling, that's when you're going to ask yourself, how do I create more of it? You'll start to realize what it was about that space that was creating that energetic high for you. It doesn't have to be your work or your business. In the first and second episode of my podcast, I talk with Robbie, and it's about how her creativity has space outside of her business. She's currently finding her zone of genius in her creative projects, and she loves those, but they are separate from work. Here's the key is that she's found the balance where work doesn't drain her so much that she doesn't have that energy to put into her creative business. Her job is there to support her lifestyle and her creative projects. You know, when I was talking about my previous business or my previous position, it was continually draining that energy from me, and I didn't have enough to pour back into that zone of genius. Again, whatever it is that you create, art, music, community, family memories, writing, dog treats, conversations, food, finding your zone of genius is going to be the through line of alignment and that fulfilling life that you may be craving. And this may be, again, really confronting because you may feel like I'm doing a really good job and I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to, but why do I not feel fulfilled? Why do I not feel like I thought I should doing all of these things? And spending time in your zone of genius may be it. That may be the missing puzzle piece. When you figure out what your zone of genius is and how you can spend time in it, it's going to be crucial to reduce and delegate things that live in your zone of competence and your zone of excellence. You're only one person. You have a limited bandwidth and resources, which are your time, your energy, and your money. Hand that shit off. Delegate. Stop trying to be excellent at everything. We each have our own zone of genius, so why not let others flourish in theirs? You have to do some letting go. Growth is very confronting and so worth it.
Hey, if you like this episode, check out Getting Real with Bossy, where we chat about what it's like to be a woman business owner. We cover all the topics, figuring out the rules and regulations, navigating business partnerships,
even if that's your spouse, motherhood while running a business, working within your values,
and all the ups and downs of being the boss.
Are you ready to get real? Pop over to our podcast.
Getting Real with Bossy.
Want to live more into your zone of genius? Join the High Vibe community. There truly is something for everybody. With our daily calls and easy-to-use app, community truly is the best way to grow in whatever way you're looking to do. Whether you need inspiration, education, connection, motivation, you're gonna find it there. You have a whole group of cheerleaders who are walking through the same season as you, and that makes a huge difference. They say at the gym the heaviest weight to lift is the front door, and the front door of your next adventure is in the links below. It's high time you activated your high vibes. One of the whys behind this work is because I truly believe that community is the best way to grow. It may sound redundant because I talk about it during these episodes, but finding community of others who are in their zone of genius or have a zone of genius similar to yours is a great way to be pulled into that zone. Our society can do things to keep us in our zone of excellence, and we're wired to be motivated by external validation. And so you have to find spaces that support you in your zone of genius. The internal is where it is at. So I ask you, how do you create more of it? And only you know what it is. No one else can tell you that. If you are looking for some resources and how to figure out what that is, maybe you're like, holy shit, Marshawn, I just realized that I'm not operating in my zone of genius, but I don't even know what that is. There are a couple of resources that I would like to share with you. So the first is Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap. This topic comes from that book, so I would start there. Another one is Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass. Her writing was my first foray into kind of self-growth and living a life that lights us up. She is no bullshit. She is funny And she will really challenge you to say, how do I create more of this in my life and stop making excuses for why I have to continually live in competency? Another one is Danielle Laporte, the fire starter sessions. I'll put links for all of these in the show notes. It is my Amazon affiliate link, so that would be greatly appreciated if you used it. But actually in May of 2020 was when I was first introduced to Danielle Laporte's book, The Fire Starter Sessions. It's not going to be one that you're going to get through real quick. It is one that you're going to want to set aside some time to sit and think through, because it is part book, part journal, part workbook. And she asks you some really deep questions about what gets you going, what gets you excited, what type of life do you want to live, what type of energy do you want to be around, what things do you want to create. So it's definitely one that is going to take time and space. I think that a crucial piece of this is going to be finding a journaling practice, because finding your zone of genius, you have to step away from the noise. You have to step back and dig into your subconscious and start to become aware of internal dialogues, internal feelings, internal thought processes. And journaling is a great way to do that. And really digging deep, carving out time for you to really sit and dig through the nonsense at first, and then really get into what the good shit is. So any sort of journaling practice is going to be really helpful in finding out what that zone of genius is. I have to be careful sometimes in how I word this, because some people get the zone of genius and some people don't. I was cleaning my daughter's room one time and I just started crying, and my husband walked in. He's like, "What is the matter?" And I was like, I know what I want to do and I don't know how to get there. And it's so deflating. And I see the end game of where I want to be, but my path feels so unclear. And that was kind of the moment that I knew I needed to dive full-time into high vibes, because I just needed to dedicate my time, space, energy to high vibe. It's so interesting to reflect back on my journey and realize that that question was really so crucial in the momentum forward. And they were small baby steps. It wasn't like I left one of those meetings being like, I know exactly what I'm going to create. It's going to be called High Vibe Cowork, and this is going to be the signature program. We're going to have cohorts, it's going to be mastermind, and I'm going to have a podcast. None of that was what transpired immediately after me asking that question, but it's been a continual practice of how do I create more of that, and that being the zone of genius.
Girl, where have you been? I haven't seen you at work in a while.
Girl, I quit and started my own business.
Really? That's amazing. How did you do it?
Well, I've been listening to this Beauty Boss Millionaire podcast, and it really helped me change my mindset from an employee to a CEO.
All that from a podcast?
Yes, the Beauty Boss Millionaire walks you through the process of starting a business and making your first million.
I need that in my life. I need someone to help me.
Just go to beautybossmillionaire.com or pull it up on your favorite podcast app. It's time to boss up.
If you're listening to this and thinking, wow, I should really journal on what my zone of genius versus my zone of excellence is, what is that for me? A, great idea, a great place to start. And B, do I have the journals just for you? In the links below are links to my Amazon, where I created a couple of journals that are just perfect for this type of exercise. So go ahead and click the links and pick up one of the high vibe journals just for you. I would love to hear what you think. Connect with me on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to the High Vibe Table Talks podcast. Send me a message about your zone of genius. Send me a message about times you have felt like that, or if anything else came up during this conversation. Thank you for listening to the High Vibe Table Talks podcast. I look forward to seeing you again next week with another incredible interview. It won't just be my voice. Let me know what you think of the rotating back and forth. Do you like the solo episodes? Do you like the interviews? Do you like the combination of both of them? I am enjoying doing both and am excited to see where this is going to go. And if you got anything out of this episode, please share it with someone that you think would enjoy it. That would mean the world to me. And we will see you next week. And it is high time you activate your high vibes.